Welcome to episode number 48 of the First Responder Wellness Podcast. My name is Conrad Weaver, and I'm your host. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are thriving. I hope you are doing everything you need to do to stay well and healthy in this crazy world. There's so many crazy things going on around the world, and it can be distracting at times. I know it is for me. I'm sure it probably is for many of you as well. But I'm really hoping that you are taking care of yourself, doing the things that you need to do to stay well and healthy. Today, I have a very special guest on the podcast, Karen Solomon. She is the co-founder and president of FirstHelp. It's an organization that helps first responder families deal with the tragedy of suicide. And she's been doing this for a number of years as a volunteer. She's not a paid staff member for this organization. She has a full-time job. I don't know how she does it, but she has really an amazing story in the work that she's doing. And we're going to talk about a new memorial, a new monument that is being put up down in Texas in just a couple of weeks, that it'll be dedicated, and we'll be talking about that with her. And so I'm really glad to have Karen on the program today. Karen and I have known each other for a couple of years, but we've never actually met in person. So our trip to Texas in a couple of weeks, we will be able to meet in person. But anyway, today she's going to be talking about what FirstHelp is and what it does for first responder families, and for what this memorial means for the first responder community. So stay tuned for my conversation with Karen Solomon. Hey, if you are a listener of this podcast, if you enjoy it, I encourage you, first of all, subscribe if you haven't already, whether you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you're over on YouTube, be sure to hit the subscribe button, and so that you can keep up with what we're doing and get all these episodes brought to you on a timely manner. I really want to bring these episodes to you so that you have resources, so that you have an encouragement to be well, to take care of yourself, to do the things that you need to do to stay healthy and well. And so I hope you are enjoying it. If you are, give me a thumbs up, give me a like. And if you are so led, leave a comment. I would really greatly appreciate it. Let me know what you like and what you don't like. And it'll help me with future episodes of the podcast to know what you are looking for. I want to bring content to you that matters to you, whether you're a first responder or whether you're not in the first responder community. I want to serve you. I want to serve you by bringing you content, bringing you guests who can inspire you, challenge you, and motivate you to do better and to be a better person, to be a better you. Because when we are all better, when we are better, we can better serve the world around us. And so my message to you today is take care of yourself. I hope you're doing well. So in the meantime, let's take a listen to my conversation with Karen Solomon. Well, Karen, welcome to the First Responder Wellness Podcast. I'm so glad we're able to connect today. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and finally talk to you again.
So tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Karen Solomon. I am one of the founders and the president of FirstHelp. FirstHelp is an organization that supports first responder families after a suicide and offers some prevention and resilience training. We were founded in 2017 as Blue Help. We focused solely on law enforcement at that time, but since then we've expanded to include all first responders. And HELP is an acronym for Honor, Educate, Lead, and Prevent. What's your connection to first responders, and how did you get involved with really with the suicide, with families of suicide in first responders? So my husband's been a police officer for 24 years. I have a brother-in-law who's a firefighter, a lot of first responders in my family. But I didn't really actually realize it until after I started this endeavor, because I look at them as just regular people doing their jobs and didn't really consider what they're actually going through every day. And after the incident in Ferguson, Missouri with the hands up, don't shoot, there was so much negative rhetoric about law enforcement that I wrote a book called Hearts Beneath the Badge. And I really just wanted to bring awareness on whatever small scale I could do to the good things that law enforcement does, because my family personally faced some backlash from local people, and it was a tough time, I think, for all of law enforcement. And once I wrote that book, I started to see that there was all this stuff going on. So I was trying to get these good stories about law enforcement, and then they were saying to me, well, what about all the bad stuff that happens to us? What about the negative? So as I wrote that book, at the back of that book, I put a list of resources that were available at the time, which was in 2016, 2017. And there weren't a lot. Actually, it was 2014 when I wrote the book, come to think of it. So there weren't a lot of resources at the time. So I started delving into that. Why aren't there resources? Why don't they know how to get help? What is really happening to them? So I wrote a second book called The Price They Pay, and this was with Jeff McGill. He's one of our co-founders. And The Price They Pay was more about the cumulative trauma and everything they suffer on the job, and just some really difficult stories about law enforcement and what happens to them. So that just kind of evolved. There was no plan to do this. People started saying, well, how many suicides are there really? And we found that nobody was really tracking it year over year. There was no live tracker. So we said, hey, what if we put up a page like the Officer Down Memorial page, which shows all the first responders or the law enforcement at the time that died by suicide. And that's how it started. And it was really only intended to raise awareness. It was only intended to start counting the actual suicides in the hopes that the larger organizations would take over, the federal government or somebody would say, hey, this is really a problem. And what happened was we filled this vacuum. All of a sudden, first responders started coming to us saying, well, I was suicidal, I can't get help, this, that, the other policy. Then families coming to us saying, we're not getting support, we're not getting help, we're left behind. And it was really kind of shocking. So, it was very upsetting too. And as somebody who survived 3 suicide attempts, seeing what was happening to those families both before and afterward, it really struck me. So we started just doing what we could do. And again, it just snowballed and people started supporting us and offering us assistance. And we started sending out care packages, blankets with their loved ones' names on them. We have educational secondary scholarships, which were not available at the time. We had the first secondary scholarships just for suicide for first responders. We have retreats, the first retreats ever that were only for families who lost somebody to suicide. We have resilience training. So we tried to kind of cover everything that you have for line of duty. We tried to do it on a smaller scale, obviously, for suicide. And then we helped pass legislation, which the PSOB, which now allows some families to get the benefit line of duty designation. So we just kind of tried to do what we could, where we could, as people would ask us. And we had a really hard time saying no. Now we've started saying no because it's just too big. And there's so many other people in this space now that we're happy to say we can't or we don't do that. You can go to this other organization, or you can go here, or you go there. So for instance, the Gary Sinise Foundation is a great friend and partner of ours that they offer incredible stuff, and they don't ask you even how they died. So whether it's suicide, line of duty, whatever, they don't care. And that's where we really need to get to, is a death is a death, not, oh, they died by suicide, they died by line of duty. So that's where we are today. And we have the only live tracker in the country, really, in the world, really, that tracks. If you go to our website every day, as a suicide is reported to us or we find one, it's recorded. So you can go to our website and there's a live tracker for suicides of first responders around the country.
And so why do you think that historically it's been such a stigma for even honoring anyone who died by suicide in the first responder community?
That really depends on who you ask. So when you think of society as a whole, there is a huge stigma around mental health, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I like to make the analogy, like when I was younger, my grandmother would whisper the word. She'd say cancer. She'd whisper cancer. And now we say cancer out loud now. It's not anything secret. It's a disease. It happens. And mental health, we're still whispering mental health. We're not talking about it as society in general. So then when you take a look at the first responder culture, that's a whole different population and what they're expected to do. They're expected, to many people, they're supposed to be heroes. To many people, they're supposed to be perfect. To others, they're supposed to have no bias, no anything, no human feelings. So you have all these different expectations of first responders across the board. And God forbid there's anything wrong with them, because if there's anything wrong with them, then that's a weak link. You look at the administration is going to see them as a liability. So if they have a mental health problem, they're taking medication, do they become a liability? What if something happens? Then I look bad because they didn't do their job properly and I didn't manage them because I knew they had a mental health problem. Then you look at, well, you're not supposed to cry, men aren't supposed to cry kind of thing. Even, there's men and women, but using that old saying, real men don't cry. So the stigma itself goes to, it stems from societal stigma, but it becomes more entrenched in the first responder culture because of who they're expected to be. And then not only that, is that what do you do with them if they have a problem? Do you fire them? Do you put them on leave? Is there a way to get them back to work? So that whole thing needs to be worked out with some kind of a national policy because we don't have anything. So you have no way to treat them equally as if it's a physical injury. And then you have people who call them babies or they're weak because they're upset. But at the end of the day, they're all human. They all come to their job with all this life experience that either allows them to accept and move on from certain things or not. So everyone copes differently. So if I see something, I can cope with it okay. You see the same thing, you can't. That's not a flaw for you. It's just a different life experience, a different way of coping. And we should be saying, here is how I cope. Let me help you cope. And instead we're saying, oh my God, I can cope. How come you can't, you big baby? So it's such a complicated issue, but it really comes down to who we expect them to be.
So over the years, you used to work with law enforcement primarily. Now you work with all first responder groups. What have you seen? How have you seen the trajectory of suicides up and down? How has that been over the last couple of years?
So it's remained pretty consistent. Our big year was 2019. 2019, we saw a huge spike in suicides, and it's hard to define that, why that happened. So we started collecting the data in 2016 and it was pretty low at the end of the year. But as we progress, because our numbers are rolling, number of people report past suicides to us now. So our number has gone up since 2016. So I believe that in 2019, we were at our peak, really. We were everywhere. We were speaking to everybody. People were starting to pay attention. And that's the year that we started to get more and more suicides reported to us. And then COVID hit. And suicide took a backseat, and COVID came, and we all know what happened there. So things have changed. So that year, the suicides actually went down, but then they went back up over time because people reported them later. Because the real-time reporting is really significant for us. We will get them sometimes within hours or minutes of the suicide. So we've seen these suicides have stayed the same. However, we see that I believe that there's a 26 to 30%. We're underreporting by 26 to 30%. And the reason I think that is because we've compared our numbers to Florida, New Jersey, and Ohio. So people who collect the data in those states, and they're closer to it, and their number is always 26 to 30% higher than what we've collected in that state. So if you look at it overall, we're definitely too low, but there's, anecdotally, people have said in the past, well, it's 50% too low, but 50% based on what? There's nothing to base that on. So for me, I base it on what we compare to other people who are collecting this in their local states. So overall, I think that the suicides haven't, it's hard to say if they've been reduced or not because we don't know who's not reporting. We don't know how many attempts there are that they survive. So what we see is it's about the same. It averages about the same. But we have seen there are so many new programs. There are so many people saving each other. There are so many people reporting their attempts now and getting help, so they're not succeeding on the second or third attempt. So that in itself, that whole increase in awareness, increase in programming, increasing in discussion and acceptance of mental health problems is a really good thing.
How are these reported? Who sends that data to you?
So we report, so what we do is we have a form on our website and the families can report it to us, which is we primarily get them from families. We'll get people that say, I was surfing the net at 3 a.m. My husband just took his life and I found your website. Can you help me? So it's, families after the trauma or word of mouth now that people know who we are. So we get a lot of our information from the families or the departments will send it to us. They know who we are and they'll send us a suicide. They know that we can support the families or we try to support the families as best we can. So they'll send it to us. So we get it from families, we get it from departments, we get it from friends, the general public. We have Google alerts set up so that if there's anything with these keywords for first responders and, suicide and different words, shoot self or things like that, those come to us and we get them that way. We'll just call social media. We'll look through different social media pages. So for instance, Facebook, the Border Patrol page, they constantly put the suicides that they have on their page. So we'll take a look and get them from them and input the data. What we don't do is we do not reach out. So for instance, if we hear of something, we don't reach out to the families directly. We might reach out to the department and ask them to pass our information along, or ask a friend to pass it along, because this is such a different kind of death and trauma. The last thing we want to do is make people feel like we're ambulance chasers. Even though we're offering them a service, it's very sensitive, and many of them don't want any help or connection or anything after a suicide. They just want to be left alone. And eventually they might come around a year or two later and say, hey, you reached out to me a year ago. I'm ready now to seek help, or whatever it is. So we do get it so many different ways.
What are some of the resources that you guys offer to families of suicide?
So we have a social media page on Facebook. It's a group. There's about 700 family members in there, and they just chat to each other and offer each other help and just offer each other encouragement, which is fantastic. So when we hear of a suicide, they get an email from me that lists out what we offer. We have the page, we have the memorial blanket we'll send them, we have college scholarships, we have Christmas assistance, we'll help them with the PSOB application. We have the retreat every year, all expenses paid, where we bring them. We have peer meetings, virtual peer meetings, where they can talk to other family members. So all of that, and we will provide them a list of other organizations, very specific, and what they offer for suicide support, as well as benefits that they could potentially apply for that they might not know about. And we kind of go from there and then find out what they do need. But I think what's really important and what's really special about what we do is this relationships that they create. We have families that get together once a year. They'll meet each other halfway, because now they have somebody there's something in common with. Because unless you've been through it, and I haven't lost an immediate family member to suicide, but I can't help them. I can't sympathize with them. I can't really truly understand what they're going through, but they now have a network of people that do understand, and they've formed these incredible relationships that are just so beautiful, and their kids are growing up together, and they have this common bond that no one else can have, and they don't ever have to explain themselves to each other. So to me, that's the most important thing that we do, is give them these relationships.
It's such an important thing to have connections with people that have been through what you've been through.
Right.
I can see that with the people that I work with around the country. Even a few years ago, I produced a film about the opioid crisis, and they. One of the messages that I got from those folks was like, someone who had been in addiction is really the only person that can help someone in addiction, and because they understand each other. And I think it's something similar to this, because, I've never experienced a family member, dying by suicide, but I have had friends. And, as many of you know, our friend Nicole from our PTSD 911 film, she died by suicide last year, and it was a really a kick in the teeth for me, and now I've been able to connect, and I'm real close with her family, and have built some really bonds there, through our mutual relationship. Even though it was her daughter, it was their daughter, I was a friend, and I'm now good friends with the family, and just having those relationships kind of helps bring healing.
Yeah.
And even though there's still a loss there and there's an emptiness there, it helps to bring healing in some way.
And isn't that the worst, when this business that we're in, so to speak, and someone we know dies, and I've experienced that a couple of times. Somebody, especially close to my husband, last year, a coworker of his, and you wonder what you did wrong. Why we're working so hard to raise awareness. Well, you too, well, when I say we, I mean us collectively. and then you think, what didn't I do? Did they not know? Did they not know they could get help? And that's so hard. And those are the days you just think, oh, what am I doing this for? I'm not making any difference. And then you see it happening to the people that are close to you and that you love, and it's so hard because it's such a complicated problem, and we're never going to solve it, right? We're never going to have zero suicides. It's just not, because of the human mind, the way it works. But not knowing what we could continue to do to stop the next person, I think, is the hardest thing, because we think we're doing everything we can, and maybe we are doing everything we can, but we're still not saving the next person. And that's just like you said, the kick in the teeth when somebody that you know, especially for you, when I heard about Nicole, I couldn't even imagine what you were going through, because she was in your film, and so that's even a different level of everything. And she's advocating, and we've seen advocates take their lives. We've seen, people who have founded organizations, even well before us, before we were around, they've taken their lives since, and peer supporters. It just makes you wonder, like, how are we ever going to stop this? It's just so hard,
It was, the week that happened. In fact, I was asked to come up and speak at her celebration of life, and so I did. And the following week, we had a film screening event, and I was like, how in the world do I talk about this now?
Yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to Jim Marshall from the 911 Training Institute connected me with, I forget his name, psychologist. I think he's a psychologist. But anyway, he's a world leading suicidologist. He lives down in Louisiana someplace. And so I was sitting outside the venue for this screening event, knowing that I'm going to have to go in and talk about this. And so I talked to this guy for about 45 minutes, and we talked about, how to talk about that. And we talked about, and one thing he encouraged was, let's not focus on how she died. Let's focus on how she lived.
Right.
I think that's such an important thing to look at their life and the things that they were able to do. And for Nicole, she was a great influence in the 911 community. Thousands of people knew her and heard her story, and were moved by her. In fact, just last week, so I'm seeing a counselor, a therapist every couple of weeks. I go and just have a session. And the other day we were talking, and he said that one of his clients had been to a conference that I helped host, and we showed our film there. And his clients had suicidal ideation over the past number of months. And his clients said how they were moved by Nicole's story, and then hearing the aftermath of that. And it gives them renewed energy to live.
Good.
And so it was like, wow, that's, Nicole's life is still making an impact.
Yeah, and you never know how many people you save. So people say to me all the time, and I'm sure they say it to you too. And I think the biggest thing, something that you said that's so important, is focusing on how they lived. Because when we talk about the stigma around suicide, what are you so mad at? Why are you so mad at the family? They didn't do anything. I understand you're mad that somebody you love died, or I understand you're confused, or you don't understand suicide, or you think it's evil, or whatever you think of suicide itself. We have to focus on the person, not the act. And that's part of the problem, because you forget who they were. You forget that these people served their communities for years, and they served them honorably. And now they're pariahs because of the way they died. That makes absolutely no sense,
Yeah. I know. And I spoke with a lady down in Texas last year who lost her husband to suicide. And, she just talked about how, the immediate aftermath was horrible, because the agency didn't recognize that. And, she didn't even know her insurance was cut off, and went to get help, and there was no insurance, because her husband was the sole breadwinner, and just all those things that pile up on a family member, and how we treat those people, who have lost their best friend, who have lost their loved ones, is so important. And the way agencies have, historically agencies have done that is such a shame.
Yeah.
To people who have served in such a powerful way.
Agreed. And we're not perfect. No one's perfect. But on some level, we need to treat every death the same.
Yeah.
It's just that's the problem. Somebody still lost their dad, their mother, their sister, their brother, their child. And to somehow make it different because it was suicide, it's just shameful.
Yeah. So that leads me to my next question and the project that you've been working on for a while with honoring these people who have
died by suicide. So hard, yeah.
So talk about what the Heroes Memorial is.
Oh, it's hard. It's a lot of work because it's just funny because I could, I can see texts coming through as I'm sitting here because there's meetings with engineers and whatnot today in Texas. So what it is when we started, we had certain goals. Our goals were to have raise awareness, to have someone count the suicides, to have a special memorial for these families, and to have benefits for these families. And we've reached all of our goals, even though not perfectly, not always what we wanted. And we're going to continue to evolve, obviously, and make things better. But one of those was to get their names on the wall. And since that's not really something that we think is going to happen in the near future, it is happening to some degree, but not. It's not for everybody. So what we wanted was something that all families, their names of their loved ones could be seen and etched and memorialized for their service. So we created a monument that has the 5 first responders and a military veteran on it. So it's got law enforcement, corrections, EMS, dispatch, and fire, and a military veteran. And we are going to erect this monument. It's a 23,000-pound granite monument where this photo will be etched into in Texas. It will be put in a park in Texas. And around the perimeter of the monument is what we're calling the Wall of Service. And the Wall of Service will be similar to the Vietnam Veteran Memorial in D.C., where there are upright slates and the names of the people we lost to suicide will be etched in them, first responders and military veterans. So this is going to be in a park in Texas. We are donating the monument, and we are soliciting sponsorships and donating the Wall of Service. It will be on a beautiful base at this beautiful park on Lake Ray Hubbard. And the park itself is being built out by the city and state of Texas. And there's going to be landscaping and walking trails, and they're going to repave the parking lot. So that's kind of a multi-year project. But the project for us is the actual monument in the Wall of Service that we are going to unveil in September. And this started on a grander scale, again, before COVID. This started in 2019, 2020. And we had our eye on a 20-acre plot of land on the same lake, but it just didn't work out with COVID and fundraising, and everything changed. So it's now 5 acres, and it's called Heroes Memorial Park. And there's Route 66. It's called Heroes Memorial Bridge that goes over Lake Ray Hubbard. We dedicated that 2 years ago. There are some gentlemen in Texas that walk the bridge every month to honor first responder and military suicide. So that bridge was renamed to Heroes Memorial Bridge. We now have Heroes Memorial Park where we're going to put the monument. So this is going to be the only monument in the country where you can put the name of the Wall of Service, because we're honoring their service and their lives, a first responder or military veteran lost to suicide. And you don't have to have the line of duty designation. It doesn't matter what year they died. This is just for the families. This is for them to have a place to honor their loved one, which is something they had never had. Now, obviously, if somebody if it's a murder-suicide, they won't be able to go on the wall, any criminal charges, things like that. There will be some restrictions like that. But other than that, there's none of the other restrictions that you might see in other places. This is an umbrella for everybody, that regardless of year, regardless of issues or anything else, personal issues, you can put your loved one's name on this wall, and this will be a memorial forever to honor those we lost to suicide.
And in just a few weeks, we'll be in Texas unveiling this memorial, right?
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's just, weather, the concrete has to, whatever, it's got to be poured, it's got to set, so the memorial itself is being delivered on September 10th. So I'll be down there on September 10th. it'll be delivered, installed, and then we're going to try to wrap it. I don't know how we're going to wrap this thing, so that nobody can see it until the 21st. But I suspect, it'll get out. But on the 21st is the official unveiling event where we'll have all the families during our annual weekend, and that is sponsored by Motorola Solutions Foundation and the Quell Foundation and One Tribe Foundation out of Texas all help. So that's going to be just an amazing, in addition to our usual family retreat weekend, we're going to have everybody there Saturday morning to show them the statue and show them their loved ones' names. We'll have room for up to 10,000 names initially, and we will at least have the names of everybody who's going to be there in September on this wall of service when they get there. And the beautiful thing is, this wall of service, it was, we've been back and forth on the design, and this isn't an easy thing to do. It's a lot harder than I thought, and especially financially and logistically, the ground, the lake, there's all kinds of stuff to take into consideration that I just thought you could just stick a monument in the ground, but you can't. So I've learned a lot. So the cost of the wall of service was much more than we expected. So the actual panels themselves are about $15,000 each. And what we're finding is some families are stepping forward saying, I will donate a panel. They're donating the whole panel so that they can have 450 first responders can be engraved. Some families are pulling their money to get a panel. And the intent wasn't never for the families to pay for these. It was for, other organizations or businesses to pay for them. And these families, this speaks to the beauty of their relationships and the meaningfulness of them having something to tie them together. That they're digging into their pockets, these people who have nothing, who didn't get benefits, who didn't get life insurance, and they're finding ways to raise the money to pay for this. And I love that so much, because that's really who we've always tried to be, is really grassroots, really small, non-political, other than trying to get the benefits, but really it's about the families and the fact that they're all giving back so much now for the other families that are going to come after them is just tremendous. I just can't even believe what a beautiful family has been created from this, and that makes me really excited. So, and I'm really excited for the 21st, and I'm probably going to cry all day because I'll be so either happy, sad, or scared that it's going to fall down. But it's just going to be such a beautiful thing. I don't even know how to express that. How excited I am for them, and how excited they are to finally have a place to call home.
Well, this work that you're doing is really amazing, and I want to congratulate you on that. It's been a long time coming, and we're recording this in the month of July, so we have a few months to go, but that time will go quickly, I'm sure, for you, especially. And as it has already, I'm sure. And I'm really excited to be able to be there for that. I believe Nicole's name will be a part of that. Mm-hmm. And so we're excited to be there to witness that in September. And so what I mean, you have a full-time job. You're sitting at your desk now for your day job.
At work.
How do you do this? How do you do this?
I don't know. Everybody asks me all the time. I just do it. I can't. There's no during my lunch hour, when I get home at night, on the weekend, when I get up in the morning, or I send a list. We have an admin. I send a list to Journey, and her name is Journey, and tell her what to do, what I need. I just do it. I do it. I take my personal vacation time when I do the traveling and things like that. It just, to me, it's just a passion project. I think one of the things that we're proud of is that we have been primarily an all-volunteer organization. We have one admin. She's only been with us for a few years because we just couldn't keep up just answering emails anymore. So she does a lot of the stuff for us now. We just get it done. It's like anything else. If it means something to you, you'll do it. And I think that's something really important to say to people too, because, people would say, you guys don't know what you're doing. You're not experienced. You don't have an education, a PhD. You've never run a nonprofit before. But anybody who cares about anything, don't ever not do it because of what other people say. If you really want to do something, you should do it, and you can do it. You will find a way to do it. That, I think, is a key takeaway from me, is that I didn't need to have experience for this. All I needed to do was care about it and find other people that cared and find people who did have the experience. And that's something I think that other people should know, because many of our families have started their own foundations based off of this, and they're doing great. And they said, I don't think I can do this. I'm not going to be able to handle it. I've never done before. I'm like, yeah, you can, because you've lived it and you don't need experience. You can learn as you go. So for me, it was really just learning as I go and managing my time and whatnot. So again, if it means something, you'll do it.
Yeah. I think I just found the title of this episode. If it means something, you'll do it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so. I mean, I can't, I love the families so much. And I cannot tell you, the days for me when I haven't slept in 3 days because I don't know how we're going to pay for this or that, or this family needs something and we don't have the money in the budget, and I get stressed out, and I would, I'm not really religious or anything, but sometimes I'll say, just give me a sign, just give me something. I need something to know if I should keep doing this, or if I should go on, or if this is the right thing. And then I'll get a note from a family member saying, Karen, I haven't talked to you in so long, but I want you to know that yesterday this happened, and I fell back on my FirstHelp family. And to me, more than anything, it's those family connections. And I know I keep saying that, but I just feel like something that is meaningful, it will find its way. I know I'm not really saying what I'm thinking, but I just, to me, this whole thing, finding the way to do it, and it meaning something, it means more to the families, probably, definitely, than it does to me. That doesn't mean a lot, but this is something that so many people have used as a mechanism to move forward. So many families who said, I don't think I would have survived my husband's suicide had it not been for the relationships I've developed. So you have to think about not only what you're sacrificing for yourself and whether or not you can actually do it, but what are you giving back? What are you leaving behind? What legacy have you left, and what have you done to make the world a little bit better? Again, not always going to do it perfectly, not always going to make everybody happy, but the cons, the pros typically outweigh the cons if your heart is truly in the right place.
Yeah. Very good. Well, how can people support you? How can they support the organization, and how can they support this specific effort?
So they can go to our website. It's 1ST, FirstHelp, 1sthelp.org. And from there, they can see the things that we do. What's most important to me is the making sure you report every single first responder suicide that you know, because the statistics are so important, because Congress uses them. It's so important because they're necessary to make change. And then obviously, because if you report it to us and the family wants to get connected to us, we can support the family. So that's really the most important thing to do to support us. Obviously, donations and things like that are great, but what's most important is making sure we are recording every single first responder suicide. And if we really are 26% too low, and everybody in the country reports every suicide they know, and it turns out we were 200% too low, then that's okay too, because now at least we know how bad the situation is. We want to make sure we're really telling people what's really truly happening. So it's important for people to report the suicides to us.
Well, Karen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. And I look forward to meeting you in person.
Yeah, me too.
Down in Texas. So we've talked several times over the last few years, but we've never met in person. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to supporting you and your efforts down there and in this Heroes Memorial. So,
thank you.
So again, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being on the program today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much, Karen, for being on the program today. I really appreciate you, appreciate the work that you're doing. I know that it's going to be a moving event down in Texas in a couple of weeks. And if you are listening to this after the September 20th event, 21st event, then I want to encourage you to think about who you know that perhaps was lost by suicide, and perhaps you can submit that name to Karen and her team for inclusion on this monument at a future date. So I know every year, I believe they're going to be adding more names to that monument and that memorial. So reach out to Karen and on her website, and they will take care of that. In the meantime, you take care of yourself. Do everything you can to be well and to be healthy. And if you don't have anybody to talk to and you need someone to talk to today, you can dial 988 for help. And so I encourage you to go out there and take care of yourself and those around you, and go out and do something great in the world today.